One issue, though, that moving to the next slide, Ray, maybe you can introduce that might not be top of mind, but I think, we'll continue to see increasingly impact privilege review in unexpected ways here.
Yeah, so this one is probably, I would call it an example of a trend. This is dealing with the quirks of personal email. We're going to have a particular, couple of examples here that we'll look at. As we mentioned kind of at the beginning, for a long time, personal email was largely out of scope for the kind of matters that I work on. And you might see personal emails kind of get swept up as part of a larger collection if one of the custodians that you had was communicating with someone and that person was using a personal email, for example. Again, kind of tying back to the JP Morgan example with the penalty and what the SEC said there was, it wasn't just text messages and WhatsApp, it was personal email was the other category of documents. And so, we're pressing people harder on personal usage of personal email and the custodial interviews. And I expect to see even more personal email get collected and end up, being reviewed in matters down the road. And that's going to really make people more aware of something that has been true for a long time, is that a lot of personal email applications don't behave the same way as Microsoft Outlook. I think attorneys have gotten used to the way Microsoft Outlook, and just because of its prevalence, right, in the corporate world, and frankly at a lot of law firms, how Microsoft Outlook behaves. But the email client you're using has a lot of control over the behavior of some things in the way the email looks and the way the email goes out that people probably, even if you're using these other email applications, you may not have noticed before. We're going to give you a couple of examples here just of how that works. So with Microsoft Outlook, user hits reply all. The previous conversation history gets inserted into the body of the new email. And at each step of the way, we're used to seeing detailed information from this person to this person, subject line, date, all the sort of like email header information is there at each step of the way. And the example that you see on the slide here is an example of that's in line with the way the email would look if it were sent using the iOS Mail app or using many cloud-based tools, including Gmail, and that the way here, I'm going to start with A, and Robert's going to cover a different aspect with B. But for the first part, I'm going to focus on how it moves people around to the to and CC lines in a way that may not be entirely intuitive here. And here's an example. 3 people are involved in this one. Got employee 1, employee 2, and counsel for the company. At the bottom of the chain here, we see that employee 1 sends an email and sends it to counsel, CC employee 2. And presumably here, this is a request for legal advice that's sent to counsel. Now, before counsel can respond, employee 2 wants to add on to the request. So employee 2 does a reply all to employee 1's email. What will happen here is that since the reply is to the email sent by employee 1, employee 1 will end up in the to line and counsel will end up in the CC line. And seen cases with either, opposing counsel or even at the magistrate judge level where there's what I think is sort of undue emphasis on privilege determinations when it comes to whether counsel appears on the to or the CC line. I guess the idea being that if it's to counsel, it's clearly a request to counsel for legal advice, whereas if it's only CC counsel, maybe counsel is just being copied as an FYI or is sort of incidental to the communication. But at least with the behavior of some personal email applications, you could very easily end up in a situation where counsel is in the CC line and not the to line, but there's really no intent from the sender to treat counsel any differently than the first email in the chain.